Alright guys, Fuller coming to you with another video. Shout out to the whole LDBC. If you like this video, please feel free to like the video. And if you want to subscribe to the page, I invite you to subscribe to the page. Hit the notification bell icon so you can be in the loop with things that are coming on this page. But if you don't want to subscribe, that's fine too. Always by choice, never by force. And if you come across this video, thanks for stopping by and watching it. But anyhow, first and foremost, I want to give you guys all my sincere salutations that you guys are finding something, breaking through, finding your breakthrough in this whole pandemic situation we're in. It is a trying time for all of us, and it's just a matter of making things, doing what we can with what we got to acquire more things in order to do more, right? But anyhow, I wanted to talk about something that is sports related, but it's related to sports of soccer. Now, if you know me, you know that I like soccer. If you know me, you know I grew up with soccer. If you know me, I still pay attention to soccer. So there was a recent French article that came out, and it was just basically asking, who is the best African player? And it had three. They had, I guess they were talking about of this generation. And so the three players, they had El Hadji Diouf from Senegal. They had Samuel Eto'o from Cameroon. And then they had Didier Drogba from Cote d'Ivoire. Now, El Hadji Diouf came out and said, I'm the best player, hands down. I'm the best guy here. I'm the most talented African player of this generation. You know what I mean? And that's how he put it, right? Samuel Eto'o came out and said that, hey, you've had one too many cocktails to drink. Everybody knows that I'm the best African player. I set out to be the best African player, and I did it. That's what Samuel Eto'o said, right? So then Didier Drogba comes and he kind of plays, I guess, a mutual role in this. He had a very classy response to this. Didier Drogba said that, it's too early to say who's the best African player because of the generation of new African players. Now, he gave names like Sadio Mane in Senegal. He gave the name of Mohamed Salah of Egypt, but then one has to ask themselves, does even Mohamed Salah consider himself an African? Because you know how Egyptians are. You know what I mean when it comes to that. I mean, you know how North Africans are in general when it comes to their Africanness. Most of them do not claim it. Most of them identify with the Mediterranean region. Okay. But anyhow, that was Drogba's response to the whole thing. But what I want to do is kind of go through their track records and then give my verdict on who's the best African player of this generation. You know what I mean? When we look at El Hadji Diouf, he started his career, his European career at Lens, the French club. But then, I think what really set the soccer world ablaze is when he had his 2002 World Cup exploits. That Senegal team in 2002, was by far one of the best African teams in World Cup history, because the way they played, they played as if they had nothing to lose. They played as if they didn't care if they would win or lose. You know, that's the whole thing. And it showed because they were free flowing. It was almost like they were playing recreational football. You know, it was almost as if they were playing a pickup game at the park. It didn't seem as if they were playing in a big tournament. And El Hadj Diouf, I mean, skillful. Super skillful, okay? With dribble past dudes, with nutmeg dudes, would like make dudes look bad, would just be outpacing dudes and giving defenders a torrid time, right? So that's his merits when it comes to the football. Now, on a club level, El Hadj Diouf, I guess you could say it. I'm sorry to say it, but it was very mediocre on the club's level. He signed to Liverpool after these World Cup exploits. And the thing is about his Liverpool time, he didn't really live up he didn't really continue the momentum he started when the World Cup, when he was in the World Cup. The momentum did not continue. You know, that's the whole thing about him. So, you know, after Liverpool, he went to Bolton, and, you know, he had like mediocre success in Bolton. I mean, he pretty much just, you know, was a mainstay on the roster, but he really didn't make that kind of impact. But granted, he made enough of an impact for clubs to still be scouting him. Like, I mean, I'm talking about even club in La Liga. I'm talking about even Atletico Madrid. And I think one of the things that like kind of turned people off to El Hadj Diouf was he was controversial. He did some controversial things. You know, he was a wild guy. Very, very wild. But it doesn't mean he wasn't talented. I mean, he had a lot of talent. He was, it's a matter of fact, he's one of the best Senegalese players. You know, I will say that over and over again, that he's one of the best. Okay. Then he moved to Blackburn. The success with Blackburn, it was just somewhat, I mean, it didn't really do much. He moved to Rangers. That's when he kind of found his second spark in the career. But he, of course, had more controversy with people getting into melees with players and stuff like that. Because he, let's face it, he hot-headed, you know? And that's pretty much where it stops with El Hadj Diouf. But I mean, I guess you can say that anytime you have a career with his longevity, you had a pretty successful career. Okay? Now let's move to Eto'o though. When you look at Eto'o's trajectory, it just seems like it was going upward and upward and upward and upward. He, you know, we all know he started at Real Madrid. He was loaned out to Spanish clubs, you know, smaller Spanish clubs. And he eventually signed with Mallorca on a permanent deal. He set the scoring ablaze in Mallorca to a point where he became the all-time leading scorer in Mallorca. And then, of course, we know the rest is history. He goes to Barcelona. He dominates in Barcelona. He, you know, pretty much becomes the best striker in La Liga for a certain amount of time. We know he wins 2 Champions Leagues in Barcelona, which is very hard to do, but he didn't do it in a row. After those 2 Champions Leagues, he leaves Barcelona and he goes to Inter Milan. Now, he did something that no other player has done in Inter Milan. He won the treble with 2 different teams. He won the treble with FC Barcelona. He goes to Inter Milan and he messes around and wins another treble. Okay. After that, after his stay with Inter Milan, he decides he wants to be the highest paid player in the world and go to Russia. And then he collects ships there. Then he decides, let me get the premiership try. He has a little stint there. Decides, hey, I can go back to Italy. Went to Sampdoria. Had a little stint there. Went to Turkey. Little stint there. Ended up in Qatar. Retired after that. Now, when it comes to international level, I would say that's where he's lacking, because of the simple fact that there were always some close but no cigars. We all know that in his World Cup appearances, we saw him exit the first round. In those appearances, we also saw him, in the African Cup of Nations get to the final, but lose to Egypt. And I have to do the research again to see if he ever, because it's been a while since I've looked at this, but I have to do the research again to see if he's ever won an African Cup of Nations tournament. But from what I recall, I don't think he's won one. I think he's gotten to the final, and that's where it stops, basically. But when it comes to individual awards, he's collected a lot of accolades. UEFA Player at the Tournament, Golden Boot in La Liga for scoring the most goals. I forgot what season it was, but yes. African Player of the Year numerous amounts of times. So Samuel Eto'o definitely is, I guess you could say, there. Now when you move to Didier Drogba, okay? Didier Drogba, he I guess you can say his career is a bit kind of similar to Eto'o's in terms of trajectory, because at first he started with, I think it was I think his club was Le Mans, his first French club. Then he moved to Marseille, and then in his first season with Marseille, he tore things up. It got to the point where, Jose Mourinho broke bank in order to bring him to Chelsea. And then once he got to Chelsea, that's when it was just all history. That's when we saw probably one of the best center forwards we will ever see of this generation. When Drogba was in Chelsea, okay, it was kind of meant for him to be in the English league because of the simple fact, number one, he's very big. People don't realize that he's big. And for a striker, it was crazy because he would make defenders fearful of him. When he was dribbling at them or coming at them, they were like, oh crap, like what am I gonna do? Like you can physically see their legs shaking. You know what I mean? So it's like, he tore up defenses, okay? On any given day he was unplayable. You know what I mean? Um so then, you know, when it comes to the Champions League, unfortunately, it was a lot of close but no cigars with him. I mean, we remember the one Barcelona game that was played where there should have been a lot of calls going for Chelsea, but it never happened. But then eventually, Drogba redeemed himself and he won the Champions League. They beat Bayern Munich. And he scored a header in order to even up the score. I kid you not, I remember that game. I was saying, I must have yelled his name like 5, 6, 7 times when I was watching the game in the pub. I was with 2 of my buddies and I just kept on saying, Drogba, Drogba, because I was so excited, what I mean, that he actually broke through. And I think it made it into, that's what made the game into extra time. You know what I mean? So yeah. After his Chelsea stint, I believe he went to China. And then he returned to Chelsea again. Then I think it was Turkey. And then I think it was the MLS. And then he rolled peacefully into the night and decided to retire. Internationally, same similar story with Samuel Eto'o. They went to, I believe both of them went to 2 World Cups, didn't exit the group stages. African Nations Cup, got to the final, wasn't able to close the deal. I believe that was the same story with him, Same thing as Samuel Eto'o, right? So when you look at these 3 players, and if we do different categories such as skill, such as athleticism, and things like that, then it would be spread all over the place. Different players would get different things. For example, in terms of physical presence, you would have to give it to Drogba. He would be the best one in that regards. In terms of like dribbles and skills, you will have to give it to Diouf because he was the best at that. In terms of like for example, big game moments and coming through in the clutch, you will have to give it to Samuel Eto'o. So my verdict is this. They are the 3 best players for different reasons. They have different categories which they are the best in. And it's very difficult to choose one overall best player because they're different categories in which they really excel in. As I said, if you wanted to give the best player on an international level for international achievements, you could just give it to Diouf based off of his World Cup. You know what I mean? If you want to give it to like people for European club level, you would give it to Samuel Eto'o, right? If you want to give it to just trophies and accolades scored within the domestic club setting, you would give it to Drogba. He's lifted many trophies with Chelsea. So at the end of the day, if I had to choose, you know, my personal favorites is between Eto'o and Drogba. It's very difficult to choose one. I just have to say that, you know, both of them for me are, you know, but El Hadj Diouf, I mean, I can't take anything away from him. I feel that he's up there too. You know, I just don't think he's quite up there because of his lack of achievements. That's why. But still, I put El Hadj Diouf up there, you know, just based on the skill and that World Cup, you know. But anyhow, man, that's all I got for now. Leave your thoughts, leave your comments on the bottom. Let me know what y'all think. Who do you think is the best African player of this generation between these two? Full of signing out.